listening to Unravel with Natalie Denise.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Nightly with Natalie. I just saw YouTube just kicked off like a bunch of people. Yeah, and I can't connect my Facebook. I don't know what's going on. I had my Facebook connected, and then all of a sudden it was like, nah, we're kicking Facebook off. And it's like, why is this happening? So I'm gonna have to figure that out. So people on Facebook, apologies to you, although you can't see me. What's up, guys? How was your weekend? I had a very, very eventful weekend in Austin. It was wonderful. I spoke at the Capitol, and it was so surreal because I was speaking amongst like some really big movers and shakers out there. Allen West was one of them, which, by the way, my vote is changing to Allen West because all three gubernatorial candidates were supposed to be there. I was very unpleasantly surprised that two of them backed out. One of them because of, there was inclement weather, I guess, in Texas. Like, we call it inclement weather if it hits like 30 degrees and there's ice on the road. We just shut everything down in Texas. And so one of them because of that, and then another one we don't know. Do I have footage? I will possibly plug it in on my Instagram. If you guys are not following me on Instagram, follow there. I'll probably plug it in tonight. Let me try to find it. I don't have footage yet, but I'll plug it in by tonight or tomorrow. What is else going on? Oh, today I did two pieces. I did one piece on, did I post the second one yet? Maybe not. Is it still? Oh, I guess it's still uploading, but I'm about to upload another piece on YouTube. The first one was on the crack distribution. Like, they're actually going to distribute crack pipes, according to the Biden administration. This is not even a joke. They just approved, I believe, like $30 million to fund like safe usage, they're calling it, safe usage of these drugs. And in my video, I ranted about this, that, we still have problems in the United States, right? We still have the foster and CPS system that's fractured. We have an influx of people coming over the border. We have homeless veterans. I mean, there's just so much going on in the United States. We have less than 800 beds in the United States for survivors of sex trafficking, but they're going to fund $30 million to distribute smoke kits and authorize like nonprofits to have like safe injection centers or something like that. I think Canada did this or something. Anyway, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So anyway, I did a piece on that. It's on my YouTube, youtube.com/Natalie Denise. And then right now, I just reminded myself to upload this. Canada, the Canadian convoy, I kind of give an update on that. And recently, what's been going on, they seized the donations on GoFundMe. So people are now using GiveSendGo. Guys, don't use GoFundMe anymore. Use GiveSendGo. Thank you, Keem. Thank you so much for that. He said, check out the video here. He posted the link, so you guys can go check that out. So yeah, the Canadian convoy, I'm uploading a piece on that right now. And what I said, that the donations had been seized from GoFundMe. So I think it was like upwards $10 million. And they weren't even going to refund that back to the original donators. They were just going to like seize the funds and distribute it to like the approvable nonprofits they deem that are making a difference in the community, which is, to me, it's criminal. In fact, Ken Paxton is opening up, I think, a litigation on that. If you're from Texas, man, Texas is just moving and shaking. That's all we're doing, is moving and shaking around here. But we got to continue moving and shaking in Texas because we do not want to lose our state. What else? So yeah, I'll be uploading that. So, anyway, let's go ahead and get started with the news. Let's take a look. Add to stream. Let's go here. Okay, let's take a look at what we got going on around here. Olympic Games are apparently going on. I forgot about this. I forgot about the Olympic Games, to be honest with you, because we just have, again, just a lot of other things going on in our lives. It's like our attention is just so distracted. But athletes are complaining. Athletes are crying like crazy in a hellish quarantine with miserable food where hope is dead, and dozens miss out on their events after testing positive for the cocoa and being carted off to isolation camps. This is like an example of their food. They're getting like slosh and like a little bone and some potatoes. Kind of looks horrible. This is coming from thedailymail.com. Dozens of athletes are thrown into virus isolation at China's Zero Cocoa Winter Olympics, have laid bare their misery, describing crying like crazy after being hauled out of bed at 3 a.m. before being fed miserable food in rooms too small for exercise. Beijing is attempting to hold a virus-free weekend in the midst of the planned apocalypse, cutting off competitors and their teams in a bubble where tests must be taken every day, with anyone who tests positive dragged off into isolation. You guys already seen how these officials drag off people, in China. I think they actually dragged off some reporter from Germany off the streets. I don't know what they were reporting on. I guess the interpreter, a Chinese interpreter, they sniffed out something that they didn't like them reporting on, so they dragged them literally like on air, dragged them off the streets. But yeah, they're dragging off these athletes into isolation. Conditions in isolation are reportedly dire. Valeria Vasnetsova, a Russian biathlete, describes that she's been served some inedible meal 3 times a day for 5 days in a row, and that it left her so emaciated that her bones were sticking out. Oh my gosh. And like athletes, I would have to imagine have to have like a special diet, yeah? Special kind of energy. Head of German team Dirk Schimmelfing also blasted unacceptable conditions for his athletes, saying isolation rooms are too small, not hygienic enough, the food is poor, and PCR tests that athletes must take to free themselves are not being given. Natalia Malisiuska, a Polish speed skater, described being repeatedly moved into an out of quarantine over successive days due to conflicting cocoa test results, an experience she described as trauma that left her crying and crying. I mean, could you imagine? I mean, let's just empathize with these athletes, right? Because you get so excited that you actually like achieve something big, right? Like they spend their lives pretty much, most of their lives training for this, training for the Olympics. I mean, even despite everybody's views or whatever, we can empathize. We can empathize some humanistic qualities to this. I mean, imagine achieving this big thing and then all of a sudden it's kind of like wiped away from you. What if you have to try out, you have to train, all these things, and then these people are dragged into these like really horrible conditions. And so they're being forced to like miss their events. They're being forced to just isolate in a hotel. You don't make like try out for the Olympics to like sit at a hotel. Could you imagine how miserable mentally that must be? During one night of horror, she said, officials, this is the speed skaters speaking here. She said officials dragged her out of bed at 3 a.m. in order to take her back into the athlete's village after ruling she was cocoa free, only to later say they made a mistake before taking her back into solitary. Oh my gosh, what a mental gymnastic, no pun intended. I was sitting in the ambulance. It was 3 a.m. I was crying like crazy because I didn't know what was going on. I did not feel safe at all, the 26-year-old said. There are currently 387 people from the athletes' bubble in cocoa isolation in China. Nobody's talking about this. 387 people? That's madness. Though this is also includes members of their teams and press, the exact number of competitors in solitary is not clear, but is thought to be dozens. How do you not know how many people are in isolation? What are you talking about? We really don't know how many people are in isolation right now. I mean, China just has the authority over the world, don't they? Vincent Zhao, a American figure skater and medal hopeful, was among athletes to test positive on Monday and was taken into isolation. Austrian snowboarder Sabine Schwaffman also tested positive. Jukka Jolinen, head of Finland's ice hockey team, said on Sunday that China is violating the human rights of this one of his star players by keeping him, in isolation despite the team doctors clearing him to play. Marco Antila has been locked up in isolation facility since testing positive for the virus 18 days ago. Jelonin said that he remains in isolation despite being symptom free. Under China's strict rules, people can only leave isolation after returning two negative PCR tests taken in 24 hours apart. However, the WHO warns against using PCR tests to determine the isolation periods because people can continue testing positive on the very sensitive kits for weeks after they are infectious because small traces of virus remain in their systems. Antila is under huge mental strain, Jelonin said, while adding that the athlete is not getting good food. His complaint about the food echoes that of Vasitnova, who took the Instagram post to post an image of the food. She says she was served 3 times a day for 5 days. The image shows plain pasta, some kind of grilled meat on the bone, and unidentifiable. It's not funny. It's not funny, but the way that they put it is funny. An unidentifiable orange sauce, some potatoes, and what appears to be plain chicken. Other than potatoes, which appears to be fried, no vegetables are included on the plate. In a message alongside a since deleted post, she wrote, "My stomach hurts. I'm very pale. I have huge black circles around my eyes. I want this to end. I cry every day. I'm very tired." So, and then look, they have to like wear these suits. Just absolutely, I can't imagine. Do they have to? I don't know. So let me fast forward to this picture here. You guys get the point, right? And she's crying. Where did that picture go? I know it was here somewhere. Or was like, here he goes. This is a picture of the food. Let's take a look. Jeffrey says they should have never went to the Olympics in China. China is literally cyborging their own military and doing ungodly experiments on what is known on its own people and creating chimera hybrids, animal humans. Yeah, I mean, and then on top of that, they are responsible for the thing going on around here. You know what I mean? They are responsible, the originators of this entire thing. They all needed to test negative to get inside, says the only Warnley. Now they are testing positive. That's the news. That's what they're saying. Anyway, that's horrible for athletes. I would just have to, being empathetic, I would just have to say that's horrible. Just imagine again, just your whole life you train for this. Your whole life you train for this. Imagine you go through the trial, you get it, and then now it's like your dreams are kind of snatched away from you because of these crazy rules in which, our own governments are also portraying to be for our own safety. It's horrible. Let's pivot on. All right, this is coming from the New York Post. So you guys have seen that I have talked about this quite a bit, and this seems to be like a really good example of what we're seeing nationwide. But the DA, the Manhattan DA, Alvin Bragg, he is a very outspoken, DA who's soft on crime, saying things like, basically these criminals, they shouldn't be treated like that. They need to be like soft on them, and they shouldn't have to like experience repercussions the way we've been giving them repercussions. Although people who repetitively commit crimes should have to suffer some sort of consequences, right? But this DA is starting to face backlash. And just actually, I think it was last week I shared this video of a widow of, I believe his name was Jason. He was an officer that was gunned down. And the widow actually went against this, went against the DA, and basically shared her opinions that I'm going to make sure that people know about this system, that it's failing us, things of this nature. DA Alvin Bragg's Harlem neighbors say that they're terrified of local recent crime. And it begins. It's all been hell in Harlem, the backyard of the accused soft on crime Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg. In the past few days alone, the storied neighborhood has seen a series of high-profile crimes, including off-duty cops shot, a man pummeled and ran over by a car, a brutal gang assault, and a city transit bus full of passengers hit by a stray bullet in broad daylight. Those crimes come on the heels of the shooting deaths of 2 young NYPD cops in Harlem late last month. Crime is up 30% so far this year in the area, and while crime rate has been risen even more by other city neighborhoods, Harlem residents are shaken through their core given that the recent spate of local crimes grabbing headlines. If I saw the DA in the street, this is what's said by a resident. If I saw the DA in the street, I would slap him in the face, honestly, said Mildred Serrano, 59, who lives in Manhattansville, houses where off-duty cop Robert Manley was shot in the foot Saturday. Crime is just getting worse and worse, lamented the Post to the Post on Monday. A lot of people with horrible charges, including gun crimes, don't get incarcerated, are out roaming free again. They need to stop allowing repeat offenders back on the street. Local resident Kathy Marie, 30 years old, said, I have a 3-year-old kid. I wouldn't dare take her to any of these parks around here. I've lived here my whole life. This is definitely the worst I've seen it, the mom said. There's shootings almost every day. I mean, look, this is what I just have to say, right? Like, why did you, not we, but why did you vote for these policies, right? Why do we let these policies go unchecked? It just continues to happen. I mean, it just continues to happen. These people, and this is like the big argument too. It's like, do not come to our red states to vote for the same policies, right? You're fleeing California, you're fleeing New York. Don't come to Texas. I'm sorry, you're coming from New York to California. I'm sorry, to Florida, to Texas. Don't come to Texas or Florida voting the same way. Just don't do it. Don't do it. Because you're going to do the same thing to our communities. Bragg, who lives in Harlem, less than a mile from the housing development, came under fire for pushing his office to downgrade from some felonies to misdemeanors while ignoring misdemeanors altogether. He was forced to walk back portions of the aggressively progressive policy, including his stance that armed robberies should only be prosecuted as misdemeanors as long as there's no genuine risk of harm to anyone during them. A spokesman for Bragg said that reducing crime in Harlem is personal for the district attorney. He grew up there. He spent his career prosecuting New Yorkers who break the law, the spokesman said. Daniel Filson told the Post. He's been crystal clear that getting guns off our streets is the number one priority so that kids and family feel safer walking to their neighborhood. So tell me how it makes sense that you wouldn't do that first, Not that I agree with that. I don't agree with that. I'm just trying to play logic here. Your argument is that you're trying to get guns off the street whilst you're allowing repetitive criminals on the streets that don't care about gun laws to begin with. There are already strict gun laws in New York City. So what makes you think that if you got guns out of New York City, that these people aren't going to find a way? A man who works as a bank security guard near Bragg's block told the Post that he's terrified of the recent local violence. It's definitely been getting worse, the man said. Not long ago, there have been shots fired nearby. Anyone with guns should be put in jail. If you got a gun on the streets, it's bad for a reason. The Upper Manhattan neighborhoods recently saw a spree of violence, including horrific deaths of the NYPD cops Jason Rivera and Wilbert Mora. And the widows of both of which spoke out against the DA. It's just horrible. Absolutely horrible. Let's take a look what you guys have to say. Bragg is horrible, says Keem. Oh, yeah, Keem, you're in New York, aren't you? It's definitely horrible, Jeffrey says. Jeffrey says, this is how you destroy a country from the inside. You can't just let criminals go unchecked. Exactly. But here's the thing, too. It's happening in every single city. And I'm going to keep repeating that until I'm blue in the face every single podcast. It is happening in every single city. All of our judges in our major cities seem to be tarnished. They seem to be installed with this sort of agenda to go against their oath to protect. It's horrible. Let's pivot on to the next one. Where are you? Come back here. All right. Fatal shooting of Rust Medic. You guys remember Rust, the movie? So this was the Alec Baldwin shooting of Helena Hutchins. Well, a medic who was on the movie set is actually suing. The fatal shooting traumatized me. I can't go back to work, he says. Coming from TMZ, the key medic on Rust is now taking legal action against Hannah Gutierrez Reed and Dave Hall, suing them for the fatal shooting that killed Helena Hutchins. Why not the producer? Why not Alec? I don't understand why. Look, this has proven itself that this is more than the personnel on set. Sherilyn Schaefer filed a suit against the movie's armor and assistant director, plus the production company and others, claiming that the defendant's alleged negligence causing her severe emotional distress in the aftermath of it all. According to the docs, Schaefer claims that she was one of the ones to provide medical assistance to Helena after the shooting, desperately fighting to save her life by applying pressure to her wounds, giving her oxygen, and checking her vitals. Schaefer claims that she was the one who called 911 and ordered the medical helicopter to airlift Helena to the hospital where she eventually died. In the suit, Schaefer claims that she since suffered tremendous shock, trauma, and severe emotional distress. She's blaming the whole ordeal on the production's shortcomings with the respective safety issues. Schaefer says that she was regularly employed as a medic on the film sets before Rust, but now claims she's so shaken she's medically prevented from returning to the profession or any other job. I mean, I could only imagine, seeing somebody losing their life in front of you. Like, again, we just have to be empathetic. Like, I could imagine that is traumatic. Seeing so much blood, seeing somebody's life slip before you. I don't agree that the lawsuit should go against the armorer. I think that, well, let me think about this. Because the armorer, I don't think that was their original armorer. I think they had somebody else. It was actually the negligence of the hiring staff on the set. I don't think it's all the armorer's fault, to be honest with you. There's a $25 million lawsuit against Alec Baldwin. I wonder how it's going. Yeah, I mean, probably not good. Alec Baldwin, we're still awaiting more details, but he won't even give her phone up. Schaefer's suing Reed and Halls because she says that they were responsible for Alec Baldwin being given the gun to do a live round, which killed Helena. Baldwin is not being sued. I would nah. I mean, listen, I agree with the suit. I agree with the traumatized portion of the suit. I just don't agree to the defendant piece. She's also suing the movie's prop master, Sarah Zachary, claiming Zachary knew or should have known the gun contained live ammo. Zachary's lawyer, William Wagoner, tells TMZ Zachary did not load the gun or handle the gun daily of the shooting. She did nothing wrong. I mean, I would be, this is an Alec Baldwin thing, in my opinion. This is just my opinion. I would be going against Alec Baldwin. We reached out to lawyers for Reed and Halls. So far, no word back. And she's seeking unspecified damages. I mean, yeah, I don't necessarily agree with the defendant part, the portion. But with that being said, let's pivot to some trafficking news, shall we? Let's change the brand. Oh, I never put my brand up. Let's do the traffic. All right, trafficking news. Rochester man is convicted for forcing a minor into sex trafficking for heroin. That's horrible. This is coming from rochesterfirst.com. Rochester, New York. A Rochester man will serve 15 years in prison after being convicted of forcing a minor to engage in sex trafficking in exchange for heroin. Federal officers announced Monday. According to U.S. Attorney Trini Ross, 63-year-old Peter Kiewit will serve 15 years in prison and 15 years of supervised release after he was convicted of sex trafficking by coercion. Authorities said in January of 2019, Rochester police officers responded to a report of fatal overdose involving a minor, a child. Officers say the owner of the house found the minor dead on his floor and called 911. Okay, hold on. I'm sorry. Wait a minute. This just turned into something completely different. Okay. So, why in the hell is this man not charged for manslaughter, for murder, alongside sex trafficking? And he only gets 15 years? Officials say the owner of the house found the minor dead on his floor and called 911. He then told the investigators that he brought the child to his house. I'm going to change the wording here because it's not just a minor, it's a child, to his house to engage in commercial sex acts with her. Federal prosecutors say that the investigation determined Kiewit, a registered sex offender, used the victim's addiction to heroin to coerce her to engage in sex acts with men in the Rochester area. I'm honestly really baffled. I'm honestly really, really baffled. So, a man, how did they not charge this guy with murder? He murdered this child by utilizing this child's addiction to heroin, which, by the way, probably was enticed before. I don't know that, but just sounds to me that they were enticed before. How did this child get into heroin, But utilizing heroin to coerce her to engage in sex acts, and then this child dies on his floor, but he gets 15 years. That's it. And on top of that, this man was a registered sex offender. What has been my rant for the past couple weeks on these repetitive sex offenders back on the streets? It happens. It almost happens every night where we're reading about this. You guys understand? Like, you guys are with me night by night. There is always a story out there, at least once a week. We can say more, that these repetitive offenders are back on the streets. They're doing things like this, and then they get a slap on the wrist with only 15 years, and then we'll supervise you after that. This is insanity. These are the types of things, again, that you locally, you guys got to get involved and just surveil your officials, surveil your judges, because I mean, 15 years in prison just in reality doesn't cut it. It doesn't cut it. I'm disgusted by that story. Pivoting on, to the next one. This is coming from CBS 19. Tyler man accused of trafficking children into prostitution. He's indicted. A Tyler man from Tyler, Texas, accused of trafficking children into prostitution over a 7-month period has been indicted, court's documents show. Brandon Lee Mon Johnson, 26, was indicted December 16th on charges of trafficking children, people, compelling prostitution of a child under 18, and sexual assault of a child, according to judicial records. The Texas Attorney General's office arrested Johnson on June 3rd last year for continuous trafficking of a person. He was booked into Smiths County Jail and released on a $150,000 bond. Yeah, that's another thing. The bail reforms happening in Texas, happening in every single city. So if you post only 10% of that bond, that's $15,000 you can bail out on. He was arrested again on all 3 charges and remains jailed on a $2.2 million bond. According to the indictments, the grand jury found Johnson sexually assaulting a child and made the child become a prostitute on June 2nd, 2021. The documents state that Johnson was trafficking people between February 1st and September 1st last year. He knowingly trafficked by transporting and enticing and recruiting and harboring, providing a person younger than 18. The information alleges he caused the people to become victims by making them commit prostitution, which in these terms, it's actually child rape, is what we're saying. The indictment also alleged that Johnson received a benefit from trafficking the children. One thing I do appreciate about this article is that they actually they're using the correct verbiage, children. I have to change this verbiage sometimes, like with saying minors or, underage people. No, they're children, trafficking children. That's what it is. Let's just say it for what it is. So I appreciate at least that they wrote it correctly. But again, some dark world out there, man. Next story coming from Democrat and Chronicle. A former Rochester Institute technology professor. So again, another, is this Peter Kiewit? Oh yes, we just wrote through this. Okay, so same story. This is it's absolutely horrible that he killed this kid. Okay, so the next story, we already went through the Rochester one, so we'll go through the next one. This is coming from Oregon. Actually, this is sourced from justice.gov. An Oregon man is sentenced to federal prison for sex trafficking. An Oregon man was sentenced to federal prison today for transporting an adult victim from California to Oregon and selling access to her for sex. Eddie Lewis West, the third, 37, was sentenced to 104 months in prison and 3 years supervised release. According to court documents and in-court testimony, West knowingly transported an adult victim across the state lines from California to Bend with the intent of posting the victim on a dating website called Skip the Games for the sale of sexual services. In April of 2019, local police saw an ad set up for undercover meeting with West and arrested him. Upon further investigation, federal law enforcement authorities learned the victim felt trapped in an abusive relationship with West and feared for her safety. After West was arrested September 2020 with a related sexual assault case in Washington County Circuit Court, the victim felt safe enough to come forward and speak with authorities about West's crimes. In October 20th of 2020, a federal grand jury in Portland returned a 2-count indictment charging West with sex trafficking by force, fraud, and coercion and transportation of a person across state lines with the intent of having a person engage in prostitution. On August 3rd, 2021, he pleaded guilty to the latter charge. Right. Then pivoting on, still coming from the justice.gov. This is coming from California this time. A Fontana man is sentenced more than 11 years in federal prison for sex trafficking a child he met on the internet. Again, having to change the verbiage, more preferable to say what it is they actually are doing. A San Bernardino County man who paid a teenager he met online to have sex with him on 2 occasions was sentenced today to 136 months in federal prison. Jason D. Taylor, 42, of Fontana, was sentenced by United States District Judge Jesus G. Bernal. Judge Bernal also ordered Taylor to pay $3,508 in restitution to the victim. At the conclusion of a 4-day trial in November of 2021, a federal jury found Taylor guilty of 1 count of sex trafficking of a minor and 1 count of enticement of a minor to engage in criminal sexual activity. According to the evidence presented at trial, Taylor contacted the victim on public website. They exchanged messages through the website's messenger feature, then switched to communicating via Instagram Messenger. Although she initially represented that she was 19 years old, the victim told Taylor almost immediately that she was 16, even though she was 15 at the time. In response, Taylor wrote her, "I'll be honest, I like your age. It's kind of hot. Yuck." Twice in April of 2020, Taylor drove to Santa Barbara County, picked up the victim, took her to a hotel, and paid her for a total of $600 for sex. The same month, the victim's family friend, whose phone she used to communicate with Taylor, found the messages between Taylor and the victim. When the member of the victim's family sent Taylor a message informing him that they were going to report him to law enforcement, Taylor deleted his Instagram account, but not before the family friend had taken screenshots of the incriminating communications. So this happened on Instagram. So there's sex trafficking happening on Instagram. Once again, this is just a provable case that this is happening on Instagram. It's absolutely horrible and abhorrent that what we're seeing, that, this just continues to happen. But Instagram being one of the biggest extractions here, you guys, if you're a parent, you really have to watch your kids on these apps, whether it's Kik, WhatsApp, whatever messengers are out there, because they're going to find them regardless of where they are. But especially on Instagram, Facebook has actually been notable of finding or that this activity continues to happen on Instagram and Facebook, and it continues to happen. There are algorithms they can form, to detect this type of the stuff, but they won't do it. They won't do it. It's horrible. It's abhorrent. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for tuning in to the Daily Traffic, Nightly with Natalie. I surely appreciate you all. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for loving me. I really appreciate it. Godspeed to all the truckers. That's right. I did a piece on that. It's uploading right now. Actually, it's already uploaded on my YouTube. You guys can go look at that post. I appreciate you all. I'll see you guys tomorrow in another Nightly with Natalie. And for those of you listening on audio podcasts, be sure to rate my podcast 5 stars. Thank you so much for listening and supporting. I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Rabble with Natalie Denise. Please give this podcast 5 stars.